Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Christmas is a permanent home. Christmas in a permanent home is only a dream for 128,000 children who are living in temporary accommodation. That's according to new research from the housing charity Shelter, struggling to create a normal life in unsuitable surroundings, including an industrial estate. Some families have been making video diaries about how they're forced to live. Fatima Manji has this report.
This is what homelessness looks like in Britain in 2017. Nearly 1 in every 100 children doesn't have a proper place to call home. These families have kept video diaries for the charity Shelter to show us their everyday lives and what it's really like to be homeless. We'll meet Nathan, a single dad housed in a travel lodge. In the absence of a kitchen, he struggles to heat up milk for his baby boy.
I'll just push it in. And yeah, I'll just put the kettle on. It's the best way to warm it up.
4-year-old Zara complains to her mum about bed bugs.
My face is itchy.
Your face is itchy.
My leg is itchy.
Your legs itchy.
For 3 months, they've been living in one bedroom of a B&B. Shandor's ashamed that this is the only home he has for his child.
As you can see, there's absolutely very little space.
Here's his 7-year-old son Billy, filmed over the summer.
We'll be back after break. This is the homeless show.
I was doing a lot. I was action daddy, but having lost the house, suddenly all of those resources have gone. It's having to find something else which he can look up to and say, yep, that's my daddy.
This is our room.
When Shandor lost his job and then his home, he ended up in a hostel. Though it was difficult enough for him alone, it was worse on weekends when Billy lives with him. And it's made him question his own prejudices.
I would be very sceptical about people who, were homeless. But I've seen another side to it, the different situations which people end up in. You just don't exist. You are out of sight and out of mind.
Shandor's now been moved on to a 1-bedroom flat, but across the country, homeless parents are facing the same challenges as him. Every day, 140 families become homeless in Britain. This Christmas, around 128,000 children will be waking up in temporary accommodation. Some of those children live on an industrial estate in South London. In recent weeks, a controversy has emerged over a converted office block here, where around 80 homeless families are being housed.
Everything written about you is great. Yes, you are great.
Victoria shares a bed with her 2 daughters and newborn baby. They've been here for over a year, and she's fearful of how living on an industrial estate will affect them.
Immediately you come into this compound, you can smell the emissions, like gas around, because of the industry around here. And then the building itself, the way they constructed it, is not, I think, it's not okay for children at all. So it's horrible, actually.
The agent's Easy Management say the rooms here fully meet legal requirements and the building is regularly inspected by local authorities. But the constituency MP described it in Parliament as a multi-million-pound death trap.
At the moment, we're spending a fortune keeping on people in inadequate, insecure accommodation, and we don't yet know the price or the cost of that in terms of mental health, physical health, the development of children.
Emergency accommodation is meant to be for a maximum of 6 weeks, but so many families are spending a lot longer in cramped conditions.
Yeah, so this is the room.
Over in the Midlands, Nathan and his son have spent nearly 3 months in a budget hotel.
I've got to wash his stuff here, so this is base clerk. Kitchen's where I wash his bowls. And
Like Nathan, a quarter of all homeless families have no access to a kitchen at all. It leaves them reliant on unhealthy takeaways.
Yeah, so when it comes to my food, I can only go like to the chippy really. I can't warm nothing up.
Because you're cold?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want Mummy to cuddle you?
Yeah.
Are you a bit warm?
Yeah.
Parents in these situations say their children are falling ill.
Where's your blanket?
In Birmingham, Mariam and her 4-year-old daughter Zara curl up to fend off the cold. It's 6 a.m. Mariam calls up the B&B reception.
Hiya, can you please put the heating on? The room's cold.
But it seems nothing can be done. The government says it's committed to breaking the homelessness cycle. Earlier this year, an act was passed in Parliament, committing millions of pounds in funding to tackle the problem. But campaigners point to these living conditions faced by thousands of children this winter and say it's a national scandal.
Fatima Manji reporting now from the House of Commons is Labour's Shadow Housing Minister MP Melanie On, who was homeless at 17 years old and put into emergency accommodation by a charity, and a Conservative MP and former Housing Minister Grant Shapps, who himself slept rough for a night to better understand the issue. With me in the studio, Chief Executive of homeless charity Shelter, Polly Neat. But first, in Birmingham, is Mariam, who appeared in our film, and her 4-year-old daughter, Zara. Hi, Zara, can you hear me all right? There she is, sitting on the chair there. Now, Mariam, let me just ask you, what do you say to Zara about home?
Hello.
Home.
What are you doing?
Zara actually misses her home. She likes to be home because it's her own space.
Come on.
And when you talk about a hotel, she doesn't.
There you are. That's it, Zara. You listen to that one.
Yeah, she likes to be prefer to be at home, in her own place and own space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't worry, she'll be fine.
Thank you. No, she likes to have her own
just tell
space.
us what you say about home. I mean, is it something that you can seriously look forward to? Do you have any promise of a home?
Well, there's not quite promise I made, not just to me, to others, but when it comes to council, they always say, oh, sorry, we don't have any properties available.
And so when it comes to Christmas, you have no real expectation that in the coming year you will have a home?
Yeah, coming year we'll be having a home. Otherwise, during Christmas, nowhere. All kids do expect to have a Christmas, and they want to put up Christmas trees, see Santa Claus, and children like Zara, others who don't have Christmas, they just have to sit in, you know, a homeless place like hotels and things like that, where they're not treated right.
Mariam, stay there for a moment. I'm now going to talk to Polly Neat. Polly Neat, I mean, that is pretty typical of what a lot of people, well, 128,000 according to your figures. I mean, who is taking charge?
Well, some things have been done, as you said in your report, but it just isn't enough. So we're trying to provide as much help and support as we possibly can. That's why we've launched an urgent appeal today, on the basis that, you know, we are seeing every consecutive year since 2011, we've seen more, year on year, more children facing homelessness.
But is that about housing, or is that about the welfare state?
It's both. So there is an absolute shortage of homes. So in the long term, we simply do need to build a very large number more homes than we have now. But I said since 2011, and it's no coincidence that that's when housing benefit was frozen. And since then, we've seen an astronomical rise in the amount of children facing homelessness.
Grant Shapps, I mean, since you were Minister, really things have not got any better. And indeed, I mean, the figures are really very similar to the way they've been over many Christmases in the last few years.
I think that's true. I mean, the thing which strikes me about homelessness, and I always thought, is that if you don't stay on top of it, if you're not always taking measures to try to deal with it, you find it just slips away, it gets worse and worse. I remember something I've not mentioned before, but during the first year or so of the coalition government, when, as you say, I was housing minister for the first half of that government, I was sufficiently concerned about it after about 6 months that I went to see the then sort of policy chief, that was Oliver Letwin, and I said, look, if all of these policies combine and if we don't do enough to build homes and a whole bunch of other things, we're going to end up in a mess. And he and I actually, with others from other departments, held monthly meetings just to keep on top of these figures, analysing them every month they came in and so on and so forth. And I managed to keep it down for a period.
What comfort do you think you, as a politician, can offer Mariam?
Well, I think, first of all, nobody should have to sleep rough. That's sleeping on the streets in this country at all. And we have, you know, a kind of a legislative framework to get people off the streets into hostels. But Mariam's in the next position, which is this temporary accommodation, which can go on and on for years, it seems. And what we need to do is make sure that people like Mariam are getting offers that she can accept in much quicker time. I'm afraid, actually, local authorities have to step up to their place, and I think that the Homelessness Reduction Act just passed is a step in the right direction as well, because it brings some more resources as well as a change in the guidance, which will say that councils have to respond sooner rather than allowing Mariam's situation to develop.
Melanie, the problem really is that this is a bipartisan failure. I mean, Labour too has failed both in government to some extent, I mean, as have the Conservatives over this particular issue, in trying to build enough houses.
I think that what we've got to look at is the last 7 years, and when Labour were last in power, we saw rough sleeping at its lowest ever level. While Grant was housing minister, that gradually crept up, and now we're in a situation where homelessness has doubled. I think it's absolutely outrageous that after 7 years of a Conservative government, 452 announcements on homelessness specifically, and in this budget 3 measly pilot projects for a housing first solution in some cities, that this government really still have not got a grip on this issue. And we're going to see 128,000 children this Christmas sleeping in hostels, temporary accommodation and bed and breakfast that very often are not in good quality, they're not in good states of repair, there are damp and there are infestations. And I was talking to the local government ombudsman today about this situation, and they said, well, this kind of accommodation, you're only supposed to be there for 6 weeks, so why doesn't the government do more to enforce that legislation? We've got to have the houses built, yes, absolutely. So Labour have said people with a history of homelessness will make sure that there are 4,000 houses for those people to live in. But the Ombudsman is now seeing people regularly coming to them, and the amount of time that they're spending in this accommodation is anything from 19 weeks to 30 months. And in 2017 is absolutely disgraceful.
Let's just hear from Mariam. Mariam, have you heard anything which makes you feel that within the next, let's say, 2 or 3 years, you will at least have a home?
Well, that's very far away. We've heard those promises before, but I don't think that's made any difference to any of us. Whenever you're going time again, it's like there's more homeless, and same thing, they promise you again, and you're back to square one.
Mariam, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And thank you both MPs for joining us. Just a final word from you, Polly Neate. I mean, if you could wave a magic wand, I mean, people talk about prefabricated housing, for example. Could it be done?
As long as there's a decent standard of housing, I don't think the way in which it's built is really the issue. I think, you know, first of all, as we've been saying, there just are not enough homes. But we also have to look at the fact that the homes that there are just aren't affordable for people. So the biggest cause of homelessness is the loss of a private tenancy. And what the government need to do as quickly as possible is end the freeze on housing benefit, so that will stop people becoming homeless because they just can't pay the rent.
Polly Neate, thank you very much for coming in.